Welcome to our weekly series entitled Built to Be Heard. And what this is all about is really taking the human first visibility approach in the AI era. Today's topic is on something that I think you may be very, very interested in, and that is the stories we learned as children may keep us invisible or less visible than we may like. Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about this. And if you've heard me speak about this before, then it's not a brand new topic. But I wanted to make sure that we really dive into this. And it is a topic that is rarely discussed. However, I believe passionately that it needs to be discussed so that we can become aware if some of those childhood beliefs are preventing us from taking our next step forward. And sometimes we may not even be aware that they're holding us back. But then once we become aware, then of course we can do something about it. So, what we're going to talk about today is the many messages that we may have all heard as children. And those messages were meant to have us grow up as kind humans. They were meant to have us be humble. There are many songs written about humility and being humble. And of course, a lot of these beliefs that may have been instilled in us were also meant to make us respectful, right? Respectful in our own homes, respectful as we were little children going to visit friends or family. So they were given to us and spoken to us with love. However, as we grow up, they aren't as helpful, right? They're not as applicable. And I believe that some of those sayings, some of those beliefs that we have in our head do have an expiration date. However, nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, those beliefs that you had as a child, they don't pertain anymore. This is up to you to be your own advocate to determine, what are the beliefs that you have and would they potentially be holding you back from taking your next level up in your corporate career, or maybe you're already a CEO and founder, maybe you've hit, 5 or 7 million, but you feel like you've plateaued. I know we've worked with a lot of CEOs and founders that once they hit that 5 to 7 million mark, they can't do the same things they did at that point, right? For revenue. They have to do something else to get them to the next plateau, which might be 10 million or 15 million or above, right? So, what are some of the beliefs that you had as a child? Like if you're not driving right now, I would encourage you to write them down, because getting clear on that and seeing, like, could there be something that would be holding me back from taking my next step? So I'm going to read some of the ones that have come to me when I've journaled about this, when I've reflected, on my own life and my own limiting beliefs. The first one that you've heard me say before, if you've heard me speak, is children should be seen but not heard. Okay. And I remember hearing that growing up. Of course, it was spoken with love and it was meant for, to teach me respect, right? Another one, don't rock the boat. Okay. I remember this one when I would be in meetings, team meetings with AT&T, my first job out of college, and this would pop in my head. Because if I thought of something that I wanted to add in, first of all, me being an introvert, it took a lot for me to learn to speak and in front of groups. It's been a process for me. I know a lot of people don't believe me. It really has, because I would get nervous, talking in front of groups, even if it wasn't on a stage in a keynote, I would get nervous speaking in a room, okay? And, I mean, it goes way back because I can even think of classroom times, but anyways, I would think, "Okay, don't rock the boat," and especially if it was a polarizing statement, like, maybe it was something that I did not agree with. I needed to learn that I could potentially rock the boat, but do it in a respectful way, because if I kept those thoughts or that information in my head, it wasn't going to help people. Another one, my dad taught me this, keep a low profile. That certainly served me well. And if you heard that as well, it certainly served us well when we were younger. However, that one has an expiration date. If you are looking to expand your reach, your corporate career, your business, you cannot keep a low profile. Of course, not in today's world. And when a lot of us were taught that belief, that was way before social media, right? Way before. Let's see the other one. Stay in your lane. Okay, well, this does pertain and this is relevant in some cases, because you can't be zigzagging all over the place if you are looking to help a certain person, right? We talk about getting into the right rooms with the right people. Well, your intention should not be to help everyone, okay? Unless you have some type of a widget that could go in everybody's house, okay? But most of the people that we work with are service providers, and they've built their company based on a certain framework, a certain methodology. So we want to make sure that we stay in our lane, helping them with AI sprints or, AI audits. We don't want to like go out of our lane and then be coaching on mindset per se, okay? Like, you will hear me speak of some things about mindset, like these limiting beliefs, but I do have coaches that I bring in if it would benefit some of our clients to do some of that work, but that's not the area that we're in. However, for me not to acknowledge it and not to talk about how some of the beliefs we had as a child can hold us back and make us invisible in today's world, that would be remiss of me, because I've seen it and I've lived it. So I want to make sure that I share it with my audience so that if it's something that you need to address, you can do that. Okay. Let's see what another one is. Oh, yeah. Don't get too big for your britches. Of course, that's another one that kind of like relates to confidence, right? Like, I never wore britches, so I don't know that I can really relate to that. But of course, I can understand that what that means is, you know, don't think you're so great. Don't have too much confidence. Well, we do need to be confident in today's world, right? We do. But the way we get that is through doing things, executing strategies, making sure that we're getting out there and talking to the right people in the right rooms. And that helps us to build our confidence. The last one is just work hard and someone will notice. Or, the way I heard it was, just keep your head down, keep working, you will be rewarded. Okay. Well, I remember when my dad retired from his company, he was a blue collar worker at a local gas company in Wheeling, West Virginia. And while he appreciated the clock that they gave him, and they had given him different, he had almost 30 years there. So while he appreciated the clock that they had given him, right? He he certainly, and this probably was from his own choice, but he kept his head down and he chose not to go into management. He didn't want that responsibility. He was a very driven person, very motivated. But what he chose to do was to be a landlord in his off hours. So he didn't want the responsibility of management. And he spoke very openly about that. He wanted to be he wanted to be a union member to serve the community, but he had no aspirations to be in management. Well, I can tell you that over the years, since 2014, I've worked with many executive and mid level managers who were doing just that. They were keeping their head down, they were working, but no one was noticing. And I think that's something that we can all relate to. That doesn't mean that we have to necessarily toot our own horn. However, it does mean that if we do not take responsibility for getting that information out there, for sharing those case studies, for making sure that people know how we stand on certain topics, like, whether it be AI first leadership, whether it be visibility, whether it be, how you're received by your audience, whatever the case is, if we do not make that known, then that is on us. It is not anyone else's responsibility to publicize you, to make sure that you get the pats on your back. I always tell my clients when they have a win, pat yourself on your back on both sides because you deserve it. Now, we need to make sure, though, that we're doing our due diligence and that we are making sure that our audience learns from us, that our audience trusts us. That's super, super important. And we have different ways of building trust, right? We have to be intentional about who we want to help and what we do to help those people. We have to be problem solvers. Okay. So that was a lot for the first point, but I'm curious to know, do you agree? Are there some beliefs that we learned as children that you believe do you believe they have an expiration date? Or do you believe that some of them are still pertinent? All right. Point number two. I don't know why my voice is bothering me. I think it's allergies or something. Anyways, point number two, humility and being humble is not about hiding. You can still be humble and be visible. Think about the wonderful songwriters that have sung and written about being humble. You can certainly still have that high degree of humility, but be visible. Because if you're not visible, people don't know how you can solve their problem, right? And I think that's important because that's another thing, obviously that we learned, growing up, be humble. But we can be humble and still be visible. You can be generous, you can be grateful, you can be who you are, right? And hopefully you're also teachable because we all learn from each other. But people need to know how you can help them. People need your help in discovering your work. It's most likely not going to happen by chance. And if you've heard me speak before, I talk often about the fact that the Field of Dreams is a movie. We're not living in a field of dreams. It's a great movie with wonderful lessons. I love the storyline. Kevin Costner's amazing. However, we're not living in that movie. Okay. We're not cast in that movie. Therefore, if they build it, most likely people will not come unless they are invited. And I'm not talking that you have to, all of a sudden, if you don't have an ad budget, I'm not saying that you have to start doing ads right away, but there are organic strategies that you can start and test before you start doing, paid advertising. So for point number two, the thing I wanted to leave you with, and I'd love your thoughts on this. Visibility isn't about making yourself look important and making yourself look like, oh, it's all about me. It's about making your work easier to find because at the end of the day, it really isn't about you. It isn't about me. It is about the problems we solve and the people we serve. Point number three, human leadership matters more than ever now in the age of AI and technology because people still want to connect with people. And we're living at a wonderful time because we can actually be in the same Zoom room with someone that is 7 hours, 10 and a half hours away from us, right? Or even 14 hours or 15 hours, right? I've worked with people all over the world in over 44 countries. And it excites me because I remember when I was growing up and I was in 4-H. I really liked being a pen pal to people that I had met through my travels. Now, with 4-H, I just traveled here, domestically in the United States, but it was really super cool when I could write a letter to someone in a different state. And then when I received a letter from someone in a different state, from a different state, from like states away, across the country, that was super exciting. And now the fact that we can be in the same Zoom room with someone that is like in Australia or, like I said, New Zealand, it's amazing because we can actually come together. We can work together. We can collaborate. We can be affiliates. We can, they can be clients. It's amazing, right? So we still cannot forget that it is about the human to human connection, and certainly making sure that you're doing in real life meetings too. That is so important. I am committed to starting to do in real life events this year. I probably will do my first one in September. So I think that we need to make sure that, we don't forget. We don't use technology as something that we can hide behind because technology can only amplify what's working. It can expose and it can really magnify what isn't working. So you need to make sure you keep that in mind. So when we work with our clients, we always want to start at the very basic foundation and be super clear in when we're doing an audit, what processes are working, what need what processes really need some further exploration, and then only then would we be able to architect what technology, what AI, what automation should be running. Sometimes we have to kind of start uninstalling or putting some things on hold so that we can figure out what it is that they really need. So having said all that, right, we need to make sure that we're prioritizing our person to person connection, and then we can bring in the technology to make things easier. AI, while it can and will replace jobs, it's not going to replace the feeling that humans can give other humans as far as making them feel heard, letting them know that they are seen, and also just giving them that sense of encouragement that they need. Sometimes it's just compassion. Other times it's just instilling that trust. That is not what technology is meant to do, right? So it's the person to person connection. And that is irreplaceable. So that is something that we need to honor. That is something that we must nurture. And it's important that we also know that as AI and technology advances, the more valuable, genuine, and true like person to person connections really becomes more in the forefront, right? Like we will be reminded of that because I know that as the world is moving faster and faster, it's sometimes easier to think, oh, maybe I'll just get, AI to do it, or maybe I'll just get an automation. Well, you can do that. And sometimes that does work, right? But other times it magnifies what's not working, or, how one saying that's always true, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So if there is a process that's broken, or maybe there are team members that are not, maybe they need some, development, maybe they're not performing, maybe the KPIs aren't being met, right? So technology can certainly expose the weakest link. So we need to make sure that things are operating properly. We need to have those conversations so that we can make sure that we're getting everything architected properly. So I hope that today's conversation inspired you. I hope that some of the things that I was speaking about really encouraged you to take a look at some of your own beliefs, to see, are some of those childhood beliefs, are they holding you back from taking your next step? Are they holding you back from raising your hand to saying, I'd like to put my hat in the ring for that promotion? Are they holding you back from taking your business to the next level up? I'd love to know your thoughts. And I would love to invite you to join us for a private Zoom event next Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Central. If you would like to join us, we'll go deeper in some of these same subjects. If you would like to join us, please DM me and we will send you the invite. So I just want to leave you with this. You were meant to be heard, and you were meant to be seen. So don't ever allow someone else to smash that, to take that away from you. If you feel driven, if you have the business that you are looking to scale up, or you have the skill sets that you are looking to advance through corporate, do not allow anyone to discourage you from being heard or being seen. And you were really meant and built to be heard. So don't forget that. I'll be cheering you on, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everyone.